President Zelensky has welcomed a decision by the US to supply Ukraine with armoured fighting vehicles for the first time. He said they were exactly what the country needed. The Americans will also provide surface-to-air missiles, armoured personnel carriers and artillery systems under a package of assistance worth more than $3 billion. It follows a decision by Germany to give Ukraine 40 armoured troop carriers. Well, let's go to Ukraine now. I want to take you to Kyiv and the Lavra. It's a 1,000-year-old Orthodox Christian monastery where a Christmas service is being held. Of course, it is Christmas for the Russian Orthodox Church, and this is the first Christmas service in the Ukrainian language being held in the Lavra. And I want to cross live now to outside the church, and the BBC's Hugo Bachega, who joins me now. And Hugo, first of all, Merry Christmas. How has Christmas been celebrated today in Ukraine?
Yeah, well, it is a very different Christmas, of course, Mariam, and I think you're looking at pictures from the service happening inside the cathedral here, and millions of people across the country are marking this, which is one of the most important days in the Ukrainian calendar. And this is the seat of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which has ties to Russia. And for the very first time today in history, the service is being led by members of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, which is an independent church. It gained independence 4 years ago. So many here are celebrating this day, a very significant moment. Many are saying that this marks Ukraine's independence from the Russian church. So a very symbolic day, I think, for those who have gathered here today, this morning, a moment of reflection. But obviously, the war continues. President Putin had ordered a ceasefire, unilateral ceasefire, to allow people in places where fighting is happening, to allow them to celebrate this day, something that the Ukrainians had dismissed. We're hearing reports that fighting has been happening in some parts of the country. The Russian forces have continued to attack Ukrainian positions despite this ceasefire that had been dismissed by the Ukrainian authorities as cynical propaganda by Moscow.
Hugo, talk to me about some other news lines we're getting today about US military assistance, over $3 billion worth being sent to Ukraine. How crucial is that going to be given the state of affairs now on the front line?
Yeah, it's very important. I think the Ukrainians have been asking for this kind of help for quite some time. We're talking about fighting vehicles. And I think what we're seeing here is perhaps a shift in attitude from some Western countries, the US, France, Germany. These announcements have been made in the last few days. We've seen that during the war, they were reluctant to provide this kind of help, these fighting vehicles, because they were perhaps concerned that this could be seen as an escalation by Russia and could be, could trigger an escalation. So I think we're seeing perhaps here a change in attitude, and the Ukrainians are preparing the next phase of this counter-offensive. Obviously, weather conditions, winter here has slowed down the pace of the Ukrainian offensive, and the authorities are saying that they're waiting for weather conditions to improve so that they can resume their counter-offensive to try to take back territory. So this is going to be celebrated by the Ukrainians here. They say that this is exactly what they need to go ahead with this offensive and to try to take back a territory that's now under occupation.
And just seeing what's happening behind you, Hugo, I know that this, of course, is a difficult and very different Christmas for Ukrainians, but how is it that they celebrate this day in the country?
Yeah, I think lots of people are taking the moment here to reflect. I think it's a moment of hope for many people. I think the war has affected everybody here. We're seeing some soldiers here, people in uniform. And obviously, cities across the country have come under attack in recent weeks. It is incredibly cold this morning here in Kyiv, -9 degrees Celsius. And these attacks have affected everybody because millions have been left without electricity, without heating. The authorities have accused Russia of using winter as a weapon with these attacks. So obviously, the war has affected everybody in different ways. So I think today is a moment that people are celebrating. It is a moment of reflection, but I think it's also a moment of hope.
Hugo, as always, thank you very much indeed. Hugo Bachega, our correspondent in Kyiv, outside the Lavra.